Hello, I'm Roisin. Hilary Mantel is an incredibly famous historical fiction writer, and if you've read any of her works, it's probably the Wolf Hall trilogy, or perhaps A Place of Greater Safety. But one you may not have read is The Giant OBrien, which is a brilliant little novella that I think more people need to read. It is based on the true story of the Irish giant Charles Byrne and the Scottish surgeon John Hunter, and it is set in the 18th century. It follows O'Brien as he travels from rural Ireland in the 18th century under the thumb of the British colonialism to travel to London to make his fortune. Simultaneously, it follows John Hunter as he grows up in the middle class in Scotland, becoming a surgeon and becoming obsessed with bodies that are different and with disease, and doing very many unscrupulous experiments on poor and disabled people. In Ireland, all giants are storytellers, and the same is true of Charles, and the enchantment of storytelling is definitely a big part of this story. We hear tales from Irish folklore and Irish history and the ways that they are interwoven, and it is a wonderfully, beautifully written book, as Hilary Mantel's books always are, just so atmospheric and wonderful, and it really gets you into the dirt and the grime of the extreme poverty in Ireland at the time, and also the wonder of arriving in a new place and the dangers of London and the discrimination faced by Irish people in the 18th century in England. And it also really gets you into the head of this very uncomfortable man who likes to do experiments on people, this surgeon, and his obsession with discovery that does not care about people in the same way as colonialism's obsession with discovery, and its lack of care for those it views as not human. It is so wonderfully written, as I said. It is so beautiful, so haunting, so lyrical, and so disgusting and visceral. Hilary Mantel's balance of both of those things is really wonderful in this. It is perhaps has less of her wit and humour as you can expect in some of her other books, but I think it's really powerful, and it's only really short. So if you haven't read it yet, I would 100% recommend it. Also, if you are into reading like weird literary fiction that's kind of metafiction, it's about stories, it's about construction and about identity, but you don't normally dip into historical fiction, I think this could be an interesting inroad, particularly because it's so short. At the opposite end of the spectrum, one definitely for committed historical fiction fans, is Cathedral by Ben Hopkins. This is a chunky novel about the building of a cathedral in medieval Germany, and it has a wide cast of characters following very many different people in this town, from a shepherd who is determined to become a stonecutter to a master stonecutter, a bishop who is working his way up through the Catholic Church, some minor nobles in the area, and also the Jewish people of the town as well, who are involved in money lending and are involved in the building of the cathedral through that. And it is really just wonderfully written. Actually does remind me of Hilary Mantel's writing in a way, in the sense that it is so atmospheric, and the sense that it is so sharp and has such a specific voice and such a specific style that I really love. I think that it is not for everyone. I think some people might find it difficult to get into, but I think it's really wonderful. It's very much like that present tense, close third person that is the same as Wolf Hall, and it follows these characters over a very interesting period of time as well in European history, the sort of on the cusp of the Reformation. We're not there yet, but there's this rumblings in the Catholic Church, and different discomfort with what's going on, and also pogroms and the driving of the Jewish people away, and the rise of kind of a merchant class. And it is so brilliant, so immersive, so good at telling that history while still feeling like an excellent story. I would say it's like 100 times better than Ken Follett, who also famously wrote a series of books about the building of the cathedral. It's just so precise in its description, and has a wit and a humour, and again a focus on storytelling and the way the story is being told, that I really, really enjoy in historical fiction. A collection of short stories that I really loved, and from someone whose novel is getting a lot of hype this year, is A Registry of My Passage Upon the Earth by Daniel Mason. This is a collection of short stories that have themes of science and discovery and whimsy, and connected with this kind of a fantastical element. Some of them are more like historical fantasy, verging on that, kind of a magical realist touch to them, and it goes across various different time periods and various different styles of writing too. There is kind of a pastiche of Herodotus set in Egypt, which is an interesting story. There is a kind of gothic horror story that has a touch of Jekyll and Hyde, and a story that has a feeling of Cinderella as well, although it is about smog and air pollution and a boy with bad lungs. There is a story set in Brazil in the jungle that has a kind of of haunting horror story feeling to it, and overlay of magical realism, feeling a little of Marquez in terms of the style. And I think what's so wonderful is that they are all so immersive and so atmospheric, which is clearly what I love in historical fiction, but they are also unique and differentiated from one another as well. He manages to play in all of these styles really well, and it's very much about, there is a lot about the natural world and about human interaction with the natural world that I think makes for an interesting theme, particularly with the ways that he weaves in both elements of whimsy and elements of horror. And I'm really looking forward to reading his novel Northwards that came out this year. One that is a lot darker is House of Stone by Nobuo Rosa Tsushima. This one is set in Zimbabwe, and it is about it's set after the 2007 attempted uprising in Zimbabwe, about a family where the son has gone missing after the protests that happened, and they don't know where he is, and their lodger is the only one who knows, but he is not telling, and he is trying to integrate himself with this family. He has an obsession with this family, and he's trying to get closer to both the mother and the father, playing them off against one another, and we don't really know what his motive is, why he is so obsessed with this family. And over the course of the novel we discover their past and what happened to them in the fight for Zimbabwe's independence and the rise of Robert Mugabe. It is very dark, as I said, and it is really haunting and really like page-turnery because of that mystery elements, and because of that darkness there is a sense of not wanting to turn the pages but being unable to stop yourself. She really builds up that tension very, very well, and there is, as I said, a lot of darkness, so if you need trigger warnings, I would definitely look them up, because if you know anything about Robert Mugabe and the fight for independence in Zimbabwe, you will know genocide is one of the things that comes up, so definitely keep yourself safe if necessary. But the writing of this is so stunning, the way she crafts this unreliable, unlikable, horrific narrator, and then twists your feelings and your emotions. You're never quite sure where you need to be, where your sympathies lie, or any. She manages to manipulate that in such a brilliant way, and it's also again really lyrical, really beautiful writing, writing horrific, dark things with such precision and such beauty. I think is a really great skill, and I think this one I'm amazed more people haven't read, because I think it's the sort of thing that would be super popular. So yeah, I think more people need to try it, because I think it has a very broad audience out there for people who are up for reading about things that are this dark. One that I read very recently this year is The Glutton by A.K. Blakemore. This one is again set in the 18th century, but this time in France, about a boy who lives in a small rural village with his mother, who is the town sex worker, who becomes involved with the town bootlegger. And our main character has grown up around violence and without a kind of secure sense of identity or home, and he also has a secret, and all of this leads to a moment of violence where he suddenly becomes someone who can eat and eat and eat and never stop, and it's everything he will eat, like non-food related things, and he ends up being swept along with this band of criminals as they travel towards Paris, doing these fake shows and getting involved in various kind of schemes and heists, not heists, but kind of a similar vibe, as they travel towards Paris whilst the revolution is occurring, whilst there is famine and disease ravaging through France. And again, it is so wonderfully written. A.K. Blakemore is a poet, and it has that real viscerality. Occasionally, I think it goes a little far, but she definitely loves to play with sound and texture in her writing, which I really enjoyed, and getting into the earthiness, the real bodily lived in human experience of the 18th century when that comes to eating disgusting things, to the wars that followed the revolution, and we have two different time periods. So we have our glutton as he is lying on his deathbed telling his story to a nun as well. So again, there is the idea of story and narrative and perspective, and what can be believed. Is this because this is based on a folktale, on a urban legend of the 18th century? The idea of belief and exaggeration is really interesting part of this, as well as class and experimentation, and the Enlightenment and the abuses of the Enlightenment. There's so much in here, but it is also so fun and so rompy, particularly that part where he is whipped up with this group of criminals. There is a real sense of fun and kind of in it, a kind of extreme hysteria, like a fun that is about to tip over too far into danger, and I think that makes it very much a page turner as well. Another one with a murder involved is Crow Court by Andy Charman. I love the cover of this one. This is the story of a small town in Dorset in the early 19th century when a young boy has been found dead in the river, and he has killed himself, and then later on the choir master has gone missing and nobody knows what has happened. And it goes over the course of the decades through the perspectives of various different people from this village as we kind of uncover what's happened in this mystery. But again, it is kind of almost interconnected short stories, because whilst we are following the thread of this mystery, all these different perspectives are told in a different way. Our setup is almost told like a play script, and then as we go into each of the different characters, there are moments again of gothic horror, of these crows watching you in one part, and then there is also kind of adventure on the high seas and again smugglers. there is almost a comedy of manners with these actors involved, as well as a look at the Luddites movement and the impact of agricultural reforms on the peasantry in Dorset in the 19th century. Again, it is one that covers and touches on so many different things, but I think what was so charming was the way that this mystery unfolded, the way that we moved through different genres and we were plopped into a different time period, different setting, having to get to know different characters and trying to work out how it connected back to this mystery. And I think that it is created in such a well-structured way that the mystery unravels at a very satisfactory pace. There is never a moment where you feel like you have solved it and you no longer are interested in what's going on, but also it's not so kind of Deus Ex Machina that you never could have worked it out. It goes on with you, unfolding it exactly at the pace that you would want to, and so I think it is a book that has a great deal of fun to it, as well as being really well crafted and really fun to read. Finally, for those of you willing to brave a really chunky epic historical fiction translated from the Kazakh, we have The Dead Wander in the Desert by Roland Seisenbaev. This book is brilliant. It is so wonderfully written, so interesting and intricate, so many different characters, and I know the reason it doesn't have a huge audience is because it is translated from Kazakh. This is set in Kazakhstan around a lake, a saltwater lake, because Kazakhstan is a landlocked country, so in the centre of this, in part of this country, there is this giant lake where the people who lived around it, their livelihood came from this lake. But further up, the river that feeds the lake in Uzbekistan was dammed in order to irrigate the land there. And so this lake is slowly becoming more and more salty and drying up, and the people are no longer able to live there. And at the same time, nuclear testing is being done nearby. And so illness and birth defects are increasing, and it is about the neglect of these people and the abuse of these people by the Soviet state. So wonderfully written. It begins with a group of school children coming to the edge of this lake and being told the story. So again, we have the storytelling being part of it, and it is told in the oral storytelling tradition of the Kazakh people, who are nomadic people, but it also has a touch of those epic Russian novels, in that it feels very similar to Dr. Zhivago or something like that, where our characters go have a lot of discussions about politics and about philosophy and about the time period that they're living in, and it is more a story of Kazakhstan and the Kazakh people than it is a story of specific characters. It is one that you have to allow yourself to be washed into and to allow yourself to spend time with. It is a brilliant chunky novel, and one that if you're looking for something to sink your teeth into, I think you could do worse than reading some Kazakh fiction. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please let me know in the comments down below any books that you think are underrated, underread, books that need a bigger audience than they have. I would love to hear from you in the comments, and if you have read any of these, let me know as well. I'd love to chat with you about them, because I don't think I know many people who have. Thank you for watching. Please remember to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and to subscribe. I put out new videos twice a week, and I will see you again very soon. Thank you for watching. Bye. I think I said thank you for watching 3 times. But